For today's Paradox Rift tabletop testing, Jack is going to be playing the Lost Zone box variants with an Iron Hands EX chucked into the deck list. That Ampy very much is an expensive attack cost, but we have Mirage Gate and we have Raihan in this list to try and make it come off. We have Cramorant and Sableye that can put various Pokemon into range, so we can try and set up the Ampy very much attack in all sorts of situations, and it actually helps out one of Lost Zone Box's previous worst matchups, the Lugia matchup, because having that Iron Hands EX can give you multiple opportunities to take multi-prize turns. Even just using the Arm Press in combination with Raikou V gives you a ton of lightning type coverage, but that Ampy very much being able to take out Luminion or Archeops for multiple prizes could be massive as well. We're still sticking with the Forest Seal Stone package and a couple of the Vs, but there definitely is a debate around whether these are better or worse than other future EX Pokemon, so stay tuned to the end of the video where I talk about some other considerations for this archetype. For now though, we try to keep things fairly straightforward and simplistic, not too different from lists that we've seen in modern day, the big change being Raihan coming into the list over the likes of Roxanne and Clara, those sorts of things, and we're having a combination of stadium cards rather than going heavily down a Pokestop route. But overall, this list should feel fairly familiar to the pre-Paradox format. And it's going to be coming up against the Roaring Moon EX, one of the most anticipated cards from this set. Frenzied Gouging is a busted attack for getting through VMAX and Stage 2 EX Pokemon, which means it's not really going to be on show in this matchup, but the Calamity Storm is also a fantastic option, getting through single prizes quite happily and easily is able to deal with basic EX and V Pokemon as well, especially when we consider we have the Brute Bonnet in the deck list alongside the Ancient Booster Energy Capsules. We can Toxic Powder even the likes of Dragonite V, which is actually being played in Jack's deck list, so we can Calamity Storm through that Pokemon, so we don't have to gouge ourselves down to low hit points for a Sableye to mop us up. In this list, we've gone for a very high count of item cards, including Cross Switchers. I think Cross Switcher works really well in the deck list. It gives us even more items to find with Pokestop, but of course we want to be using that Professor Sada's Vitality as our critical supporter card through certainly the opening turns of the game, which means we can't be using Boss's Orders and taking out key threats on our opponent's board unless we have the Cross Switchers within the list. So they can be a little bit clunky at times, they're not always going to line up in the hand quite perfectly, but we are playing Mysterious Tail Mew to try and make that happen, as well as Big Dig with Pokestop throughout the game. So that was my main theory around adding Cross Switchers into the deck list, although I understand that taking these out of the list and going just to a second copy of Boss's Orders opens up a ton of deck list space. I feel like your opportunities to use that Boss's Orders isn't all that likely in a build like this. We're going to be utilising the new Earthen Vessel card. It's a fantastic option in the deck list, seeing as though we want to thin out all of our Dark Energy, really. We want multiple in the discard pile for our Professor Sada's Vitality supporter, as well as Dark Patch, so ideally we can power up these Roaring Moon and even the Brute Bonnet pretty sharpish and get into the action. Now, this was one of our very early deck lists, and although it's not hideous, I feel like there are some cards I want to be changing after having a few more games with the archetype, so again, stay tuned to the end of the video to have a look at the other considerations I've got for this archetype, because there's a ton of variations I want to experiment with in the deck list. If you're looking for PTCG live codes, make sure you check out the Potown store. You can get a 5% discount on your orders using that code, OmniPoke. So Jack is going to be going first in game one. He is playing the Lost Zone side of things in the Lost Zone sleeves. Should be pretty easy to follow. And I'm playing Roaring Moon in the Ace Rhoda sleeves. You can see I've led Roaring Moon. Jack has led with Comfey and has his first action of Hisuian Heavy Ball, which is a really nice card to see early with Lost Zone. It gives you full information of your prize cards before going through your flower selecting, so you know exactly what you have access to throughout the game, and he's even able to grab a Comfey here, so that's fantastic. He's gonna put the prizes in that order because it gives us space to start utilizing the Lost Zone here as well. Already met with the tricky decision of Raikou V and Switch Cart. Raikou not the most efficient attacker in this matchup because Roaring Moon are so chunky, but Jack might be thinking about some possible targets for Forest Seal Stone if those open up in his hand, and just improving his outs. Another tricky one has Colress versus Nest Ball as a selection, and he is going to Nest Ball out the Radiant Greninja to continue to draw some more cards here. So two pretty tough selects early on, but definitely indicates that there's a number of energy in hand right now. Does draw a couple more cards from that Greninja. We'll see if he has access to any more Ball Search or anything else. I don't know. He does have a Colress in hand as well, though, so that was probably influencing his select right there. I'm going to begin things with Battle VIP Pass. And I think I already spotted a Sada and a Dark Energy in hand, so Radiant Greninja would be ideal. The fact that I'm looking at Squawk, though, tells me that possibly I prize the Greninja, and Greninja's actually a really key piece to unlock my current hand, because without it, I'm actually going to have to bin a Sada, which is a little bit worrying, because it's obviously the supporter that we would like to use turn 1 to enable a turn 1 attack here and begin putting pressure on Jack. Especially important because he's only got 2 Comfey down, so if I'm able to knock one out, maybe I make it difficult for him to get to 7 next turn. But, yeah, with no Greninja in sight, I have to Squawk the whole hand away. And there goes a Sada and a Cross Switcher, some important pieces here. Unfortunately, a couple Jet Energy were in my opening hand, and those are a lot less live than just Dark Energy fueling the discard pile. Do hit a couple Nest Balls from the Squawk and Seize, though, so I can at least get Brute Bonnet and Mew down onto the board. Let's see. We have a Pokegear now, obviously hoping to hit Sada. Even if it would just be for 1, it would be pretty massive. But just to fail altogether, we don't play that many supporter cards. We play 2 Iono, the 4 Sada, and the boss. Which means... Oh, wow, we have Cross Switches in hand, so that's all 3 played. And it's just pre-Iono. So I want to get the Mew into the active position, because I know I'm going to need a lot here, right? Earthen Vessel's actually a big card. Gets me a 2nd energy in the discard pile, and pulls a couple out for me. Wow, we even have another Vessel. So now there's 3 energy in the bin. It's possible for me to actually launch an attack here. It would be double patch, attach, and find switch card. Or it would be triple patch plus attach to the active. The Pokestop doesn't help out too much, though. That's our 2nd Iono gone, and that's really bad against Lost Zone decks, because we know that they love to grow large hand sizes. So that Pokestop was not ideal. I got rid of 3 Cross Switches and Boss and 2 Iono, all on this first turn, which is really rough. I'm able to Mew into Dark Patch. Let's see if I can launch any attack here. If I can, all this discarding would be worth it, but I just see a ton of energy in hand, actually. Oh, wow, so it's just going to be the Motivate from Squawk. It's really not where you want to be. It is one way of getting some extra damage into play. We do have the Collapse Stadium in the deck list, so maybe I'm hoping that with the Greninja in the active position, it's difficult for Jack to get to 7 again, and maybe they just has to hit with a Cram, and maybe I can undo that Cram damage with a Collapsed. I got to feel like these sorts of things that were going through my mind this turn. And it should be worth noting that Squawk is a decent panic play if all else fails. Definitely something that you want to keep your eye on. Jack's going to switch carts. Then we're going to see a Nest Ball here. I think the Iono was pretty rough to him. He has a ton of switch outs, but obviously the Chorus was shuffled to the bottom. Will he grab the Cram at this stage? No, it's going to be another Comfey. With the Forest Seal Stone and with the vacuums, he can still find ways out of this. He has, yeah, a few switches in hand right now. Then he's faced with Comfey versus Cram. I think that's a pretty easy choice. We'll rope around the Squawk. I'm going to bring up the Mew. Jack does get to 4. There goes a Psych Energy. Going to see another rope. And I have definitely a decision here. Bonnet's pretty okay. It blocks. I think my hand is so slow that... Oh, wow. Okay, we're actually going to go the Roaring Moon here. Still want to respect the fact that Jack could get to a Chorus pop-off. So I couldn't really risk the Squawkabilly here, I suppose. I do have the Collapsed in hand, actually. So if I could have called Jack's bluff there, it would have been a pretty solid read. But Jack still had, yeah, Pokestop plays. He still had this one select, so it was pretty risky. Another tough one for Jack, where he has to get rid of a Mirage Gate now. All of these selects have been pretty painful. The whole suite of them, apart from the extra Comfey, I guess, look like good resources. Sometimes you do just have games like that with Lost Box. He even milled his own boss from his Pokestop. Then I get another Troll Pokestop. There goes Sada number 2 for me. We're just going to get a Dark Patch onto the Moon. We're going to attach to Roaring Moon in the active position. And I think that's all we got here. So we are going to go for a Calamity Storm and take the first prize of the game. Been a little bit slow from both of us, really. I am just hoping that the size of Roaring Moon is going to be what's helping me out more than anything here. I've tanked a hit, I've got the Ancient Booster Capsule on, so a Sableye can't simply finish off the Roaring Moon. Jack would also need to find Lost Vacuum. So that's something that's probably going through his head here. We see yet another tough choice where it's Raikou versus Lightning Energy. The whole game has been a bit of a grief for Jack overall so far. He does actually have Vacuum in hand, so if he could get towards... Man, if he could even work out an Iron Hands turn, that could be a 3-prize knockout here. I think he has the hands in hand. The Iron Hands EX in hand, I should say. He has yet another rope, so he can Confe one more time. Finally gets an easy choice of a VIP hitting the discard pile. The Lost Zone, I should say. I think he also has Vacuum plus VIP in hand, so that could be a decent target if he does want to get rid of the booster capsule. But I don't think he has a way of actually attacking with Iron Hands right now. He's actually just going to attach to Conve and pass. Didn't want to play the Pokestop here. I think that's the only way he could have found some heroics if he was to like dig towards gates. But I think he had none, so he just thinks it's low odds to actually get anything going here and just prefers to just go Pokestop. There was possibly some value to play the Pokestop just to find any Nest Ball there, because that would unlock him using the rod that's in hand to get a Cram back, and he can just attach Retreat Cram, take a single prize knockout. Doesn't feel great, but when you do have Iron Hands, you can go back onto some nice prize maps later on with this damaged Roaring Moon and the Squawk. But regardless, it means that I have a turn that I wasn't expecting to have, really. I'm able to Pokegear into the Sada, then I can attach Retreat into Roaring Moon, so I can get a full value Sada now onto 2 of my Ancient Pokemon. We're going to go Roaring Moon and Brute Bonnet. And this is certainly a matchup where Roaring Moon doesn't have many great lines of play. It's just trying to be that chunky dude, basically. That's the main emphasis of it in this matchup. Ask the questions of Jack. But we've gone a couple prizes up here. And we got an unlikely free turn out of him last turn, where from a huge number of selects he couldn't really get much going, even the Greninja draw. But he could still, he's still been able to hold this like vacuum hand and such. So if he can work towards a Gate plus Raihan, one of those sorts of combinations. Oh wow, there's Gate and Raihan together in a flower select. That's exactly, he wants both of these. Oh my goodness, that's so unlucky. That's like exactly the 2 cards he wanted, just not together. That's really rough. He gets rid of the Raihan. So now he has Gate Energy. So he's 1 away, really. Oh, then he hits Gate Colrus. This is a real Lost Zone troll game for sure. He can do the hands thing, though. He can certainly do it if he wants to. Looks like we're seeing Sableye, so maybe he's going for just the Vacuum Sableye play here to take the 2-prize knockout on Roaring Moon and keep the Iron Hands around for later. Can try and use the Iron Hands on a Squawkabilly, perhaps. But because he's lost Boss, I feel like it was pretty okay to get the hands into play here. Because, like, what else are you using these sorts of cards on? Oh, wow. So he goes for 12 on the Squawkabilly. Still chooses to hold on to the Vacuum. And yeah, I have the Collapse Stadium in hand from a few turns back. And Jack sees that that's going to put him quite far behind, another turn lost from him. So the Roaring Moon kind of just cruised to victory there. It does rely on its tools to be the bulky part of it, so Lost Zone can take that away at times. So it's not necessarily the easiest matchup for the Roaring Moon, but it is still a lot of meat to get through. And ideally, it's coming out the blocks pretty quickly. So I think it's similar, really, to the Miraidon matchup, where you have to try and use your tools, your Switch Carts, your Collapse Stadium. Those sorts of cards are going to be crucial, and even those Ionos as well. So I think it should play out pretty similarly to Miraidon, which means I would give the Lost Zone player a small edge, but things just did not align nicely at all with any of those flower selects for Jack. So let's see if the fortunes can turn for Jack in this next game. I did have a couple mulligan cards, but because we are doing best of 2s, I'm able to go first in this game. And we have a really solid start with Vessel, getting rid of a Dark Energy, allowing me to access 2 more cards, thinning the deck to improve the odds of this Mysterious Tail Mew that I've started, which is great. But also just the mini goal of this archetype is certainly to get a ton of energy into the bin as quickly as possible. Haven't really been able to see what else is going on in my hand here to see what's what. But no doubt getting a turn attachment would be huge for getting just a turn to attack off. But also just banking more energy is going to be massive. Looks like I don't have much, so we are going to go for a Mew here. And we do find the Battle VIP pass, which is pretty massive. Again, looks like a reasonable hand to either Greninja or Squawk into. We have a number of Dark Energy in the hand, so we are just going to go Roaring Moon plus Radiant Greninja. Lets me see a couple more cards. Another energy hits the discard pile to improve our Sada value for turn 2. And I'll be able to certainly bank an attachment onto this Roaring Moon. It's also going to be an Ancient Booster Capsule. So all good there. Not a bad turn 1. Got a couple energies down. Got an attachment in. That's pretty much all I'm asking for. Even able to get another Pokemon into play, so that if I get hit with a rope, I can go into the Radiant Greninja quite happily and block any cram pressure. Jack starts off with a Flower Selecting, and then has a VIP pass of his own, so he's going to be getting into this game quite nicely. Jack is going to have a quick look through his energy. He's already just lost zone to Psychic, so definitely understandable. We are playing quite a high count of physical energy, actually. We're playing 10 in this deck list. Because I'm incorporating the Raihans as well as the Rods, I was thinking I wanted really high counts of these energy, because banking each of them individually in the discard pile is good for Rod, but also really good for Raihan. So there'll be situations where you always want all of those 3 specific energy, depending on what attacker that you want to try and go for. So I think me and Jack have both kind of agreed that maybe just a 4th Rod is better, but for the list in front of you, that's what we've gone with. And it's pretty close, I think. Because energy is just so good in the opening hands to get Greninja value, to get retreats in. It's just such a better card than Rod. And if you have Raihan, you already have some extra recovery compared to a Rod. So let me hear your thoughts on that down below. Is 10 energy too much for a turbo list? Jack's able to select again. That's triple Confade, then has the Forest. So he's going to have a really good turn here. You would imagine this is going to be, yep, for Colress, the super secret, obvious Colress, because he hadn't played one yet. So this is going to be getting him to 5 cards. He has his own tool in play, so as long as he finds Vacuum, he could get to 7. Cram gives him a decent fallback attack if he wants to just go through the Mew now. Looks like he's debating between Switch Cart, Artisan, a few other pieces. Really thinking about it. That is Lost Zone for you. Actually chooses to get rid of a Rod and an Artisan. Keeping the Cart. Because he wants to go through the active Mew, I would imagine. And just deny me my push towards Dark Patch or anything like that. Actually, he is going to play the Rope instead. I'm going to go into the Roaring Moon. You can, of course, Sada to the active. So I'm a Sada attachment away from just swinging back into this cram. So we're going to take the 110. Top deck of VIP passes, textbook. Going into that turn 2, I'm able to swing the Pokestop. Pretty nice hits there, actually. Nestball plus Dark Patch is really, really handy. Means now I can get full Sada value with 3 Dark in the bin. And possibly even get to work on this second Moon with the Dark Patch that I just got. I'm not sure if I found Switch Cart. That would also be pretty massive, actually. Because carting would put me out of that Sableye follow-up range after the Ancient Booster's removed from via Lost Vacuum. We're going to Vessel again. I think I've already drawn into like so many of my Dark Energy. We're going to Dark Patch. We have energy to the active. We have another booster. And that's what it's all about, really. We're making some really chonky guys and just beginning this prize race and asking questions of Jack, really. As that cram goes down, I remove the Pokestop in order to get there. Jack now is going to get some selecting underway. Nestball versus Sableye. He already has a Sableye on board. So maybe debating what's stronger here. The here and now of gating into a different attacker could be more powerful. Yeah, and looks like he will prefer the Nest Ball here. We're going to see that now. Eyes up Radiant Greninja. Even that could be a decent attacker at this stage. There's no Manaphy on the board currently. He does have Water, Lightning, and Psychic Energy all in the hand for a turn attachment play alongside Gate. This last config got him to 7, so he can unlock the gates. He's going to go Lightning to Raikou V and Water to the active to retreat out of there. Let's see, Greninja gets rid of a Lightning Energy. Going to be the turn attachment of Water. He can fleet-footed a card. Don't think he played any supporter this turn. Had Raihan, but didn't really want to use it just yet. Trying to save it for potential Iron Hands plays, possibly. So he's brought up a Raikou for us, a nice 2-prizer that we can munch quite happily, as long as we have access to Stadium here. It's currently not in play. We can take advantage of both stadiums, mine or my opponent's. We see a Nest Ball after a quick Greninja draw. There's the next Roaring Moon. I think I have another Sada in hand, so the chain of moons is really rolling. Here we go. The gang's all here. We're going to Ultra Ball away a Squawk and a Battle VIP Pass. And debating a Roaring Moon, but no, just going to go for a Brute Bonnet. Jack's already taken 2 prize cards, so threatening Bonnet as a single prizer definitely makes sense. We are going to see a Dark Patch onto my next Roaring Moon, however. I'm going to see an attachment to the Brute Bonnet, so I'm getting both powered up, ready to go. We have the Collapse. It's a shame to burn this, but it's what I got to do to get a Calamity Storm off here for full value. So we will take out the Raikou. And again, Jack's a little bit behind on prizes. Needs to start getting some more attackers into the mix here. Definitely needs to get some vacuum value in as well. There is the option for him to go quite Sableye heavy, actually. He could try and Sableye through Brute Bonnet this turn. Have Mew peppered up. That would take me down to 1 prize card remaining, and he'd have to find a way through 1 Roaring Moon with like a Dragonite play, possibly, alongside Lost Vacuum. That could certainly be his line here. He has 3 turns to do it. So if he can go Sableye. I know it's tricky because one's in his Lost Zone, so he'd have to combine it with like Rod and Bull Search. So there's some issues here. His prize map's there. It's just whether or not he can do it in time. Going to see the Colress gets rid of VIP Pass and the Psychic Energy. So possibly the Sableye is not part of his grand designs here. Debating the sequencing of selecting versus Pokestop versus does he use any gates first. It's going to be the Flower selecting first, couple supporters in the same hand, then gets a pretty nice Pokestop, throws away Manaphy, so can hit Rope plus Nest Ball. Is getting pretty thin in hand size as well. I feel like he probably has to capitalize on some of these gates this turn. He could also go for a Greninja play, Greninja knock out the Mew, and put damage on Brute Bonnet, possibly. So it is going to be a Rod, so I don't mind a Sableye play either here. It's also looking pretty solid. Like I said, it could be his easiest map here. If he goes Sableye twice over... could be nice. Don't mind powering up Greninja a little bit here, even with Raihan attachments. That could be pretty nice here. He's going to vacuum away probably this Ancient Booster Energy Capsule, I would imagine. I think that's 2 of them down. My previous Roaring Moon had 1 on it. Yeah, so Jack is going to start powering up the Greninja. I really like this play. Oh, he obviously can't Raihan because he Chorus this turn, but yeah. Quite a few energy in the bin, which is quite limiting for him. Might have to Rod lots of energy back into the deck. No, it's just eyeing up the Lost Mine. He's going to go 6, then 4 to Greninja, and 2 to the Roaring Moon. Probably just because he knows that the Brute Bonnet can gain more hit points, so wants to just not worry about that at all. There's no doubt this Pokegear is looking for Iono. Doesn't come together by the looks of things. A Hand Disruptor feels pretty important here. If I can make that come together, Jack's large hand size really has to be whittled down a little bit here. Not sure if I'm seeing it though in the hand. I'm debating a rope by the looks of things. We're just going to feed the Sableye. We're going to get the cheeky switch cart in. Just so I can burn some of these cards by the looks of things. And then we're just going to knock out the active. Going to see a Raihan from Jack now. Can get a Water Energy onto this Greninja. Didn't see what he took. Actually, he's changing his idea. Actually, just going to go for a Comfey. So Jack's still with 3 prize cards to take. Can fully take down Greninja, but then we'll be getting Iono'd to 2 cards if I can find it. Let's see. I'm going to Pokestop. Gets rid of a couple support cards. And that Cross Switcher is also dead, I believe. We're able to Dark Patch to Brute Bonnet. Maybe attacking with this is going to be the best thing for me here. We do have the Iono, so Jack has a lot of work cut out for him if he wants to get through this Roaring Moon. He has to make a Dragonite happen all in one turn. Also booting the Pokestop as we go. I think the Iono must have been a top deck or a prize card that I took, right? Because I definitely would have played it on the previous turn. Jack's getting some selectings in. There's Boss versus Lightning Energy. Don't think that changes anything. No. Okay, so it looks like the Dragonite being in the prize cards definitely made life difficult for him. And Moon kind of just got there. It was kind of just too big and too annoying. You can see how the switch cards can offset the Cram plus Sableye early game, forcing Jack to have multi-prizes on the board, and that's exactly where Roaring Moon wants to be. Bashing through some opposing V and EX Pokemon is exactly where we want to be as Roaring Moon, so yeah, a pretty cool showcase. Obviously there's not too many decisions to the Roaring Moon deck in this matchup. We're just trying to be a big nuisance, and that's exactly what it was in those games. So let's have a look at my other considerations for both of these lists. So despite being quite a straightforward archetype, there's actually a lot to unpack with Roaring Moon. Because we're an all-basic deck, and really our objective is very simple in every game, it's pitch off our Dark Energy and get them all back into play with our supporter, our Dark Patches and whatnot. It's really trying to find the most consistent way of doing that, which is going to be the most successful list of Roaring Moon, in my opinion. So the first thing I wanted to touch on really was Energy Switch. It could come into the deck list even in low counts on its own, because Professor Sada is powering up 2 Pokemon at once, so every now and then Energy Switch can be used in the early stages just to make sure your initial Moon is set up. But we could also commit more heavily down this avenue with Galarian Moltres V, with those Direflame wings allowing us to attach a Dark Energy to it from the discard pile every turn of the game, which has amazing synergy with Energy Switch and just sort of adds to our overall raw outs. Similar to Dark Patch, where the Moltres is quite searchable in the opening stages, so as soon as we find these energy switches, we can start getting a Roaring Moon powered up, ready to go, or we could just even use the Moltres V itself in the opening stages if we are happy enough to get through some smaller hit point Pokemon. If we're going to be playing Moltres, we could go even further down a V package with possibly even a Luminion in the deck list. Again, the card is just reasonable in its own regard. We play a low counter supporters, so having Ultra Ball outs in the deck list could be fantastic. The list that I played, of course, played only 1 Ultra 3 Nest Ball, but if you're playing a V package, you're probably going down towards a heavier Ultra Ball count to unlock that Luminous sign to make sure you're getting access to your Professor Sada. I think it's not too much space being changed. It would be Pokegears out, Luminion in, as well as Ultra Balls being flip-flopped with Nest Balls. And then you gain access to one of the most busted cards in the game, the Forest Seal Stone, allowing us to tutor a specific card during turn 1. Could be massive, because at the end of the day, we are combo-based. There'll be situations where you're just a piece away, and and Forest Hill Stone, once you've finished all your draws for the turn, can be that final piece, which is phenomenal for you. The Town Store is actually a pretty good stadium card in Roaring Moon, the main reason being you're going to be booting the stadium off the board in many situations after that turn 1 if you are attacking, right? So you can get activation of Forest Hill Stone, but you know that your opponent isn't getting value from your own stadium card. A similar thing really for the Pokestop as well. It's why I like both of these sorts of stadiums in the deck list. So there's going to be a bit of a tug of war between these V-based builds with Forest Hill Stone Town Store and a list more similar to what I've already shown today. If you are considering the Town Store package, I'm also considering Emergency Jelly as a one-of in that sort of deck list. I think it's really quite helpful compared to the Ancient Booster Energy Capsule because you could jelly up one of your Roaring Moons knowing that you're going to use a Frenzied Gouging attack so that by the end of your turn you actually push yourself out of range of a response Iron Hands EX or some lower hit point basic Pokemon from coming in and finishing you off. I would only really try this in a Town Store build though, it feels too inconsistent and you don't really want to play a huge count of these. I would say 1/2 maximum, and that would only be in a heavy Town Store build. Then there's a few different card draw considerations. Big Barrel of course is going to help you through Iono and Path to the Peak, giving you just extra draws to continue onwards with the game. I was utilizing Jet Energy in my deck list and I actually made a bit of a big mistake really with just how many Jet Energy I played. I think I was wrong with my ratios. I think realistically 2 Jet is probably the maximum count. So straight away I want to either steal those spaces into other things or just have a higher count of Darkness Energy overall. However, 1 or 2 copies of Gift Energy could be better than Jet just to help you out protecting yourself against Iono once again. Mew EX won't be all that fantastic under Path of the Peak, however, it is at least a free retreat pivot for you, which could be handy in the deck list, and that restart every now and then will get you a few cards throughout the game. Again, if you are considering the Mew EX, I would go heavier down an Ultra Ball route so you can cycle your hand more efficiently. Whenever you have space with the Roaring Moon deck, you should always be considering Trekking Shoes. It's an item card, which is great with Pokestop. It's naturally drawing you cards, and it's allowing you extra ways of discarding Darkness Energy in the opening stages, which is of course a crucial element of the archetype. Personally, I'm quite a big fan of the Brute Bonnet because you can power it up with Professor Sada, but there are some other single prize attacking Pokemon that I'm also thinking about. The Glowing Moltres is a fantastic late game beat stick and has some internal synergy with Energy Switch within your list as well, whereas Morpeko could be a pretty nice pivot in the deck list, whilst also being a fantastic early game option against evolving basic decks without putting a 2-prizer in the active position. Finally, there is some discussion on whether or not Darkrai V-Star should be in the deck list. Currently, the list I showed you wasn't playing any V-Star power, so gaining that Star Abyss could be massive, giving you more access to your Dark Patch, your cross switchers, and even I have seen Japanese lists utilizing cross transceiver to give you access to supporter cards like Boss's Orders, Iono, and of course the Sada as and when you need it. The Darkrai V-Star could also be a pretty efficient attacker into single prize matchups and has naturally decent bulk, so I don't think this is going to be a bad 1/1/2/2 count in the build either. It's something I need to really experiment with. The last thing I want to touch on really is just Ancient Booster Energy Capsule and whether or not it's worth it in the deck list. I think that hit point buff is going to be most important against Iron Valiant variants, as well as the Miraidon matchup, and possibly to an extent the Mirror match as well. If you're the one not playing the Ancient Boosters and your opponent is, and if you're using the Frenzy Gouging more than they are, it gives them the opportunity to use more single prize Pokemon to take a 2-prize knockout, and if they're combining that with Hand Disruption, it can put you on the back foot. However, other than these matchups, these are some clunky tool cards, especially if you're not playing that Town Store, and you'd much rather have them as item cards to help you get your Wombo combo rolling. So I could certainly consider taking out the Brute Bonnet and the capsules altogether in favor of other single prize Pokemon and a higher count of items in the deck list. Onto my Lost Zone box considerations, I think the obvious one is Iron Valiant EX and why it is/isn't in the list. Because I was trying Iron Hands EX, it made sense for me to continue to have Raikou and Dragonite in the list with the Water and Lightning Energy package, but if you want to go down a more heavily Psychic based build and possibly even cut the Forest Hill Stone V package altogether in your deck list, an Iron Valiant is a fantastic attacking option. The Tachyon Bits is amazing with the Sableye, even in single prize matchups, and it's still doing almost the same amount of damage as Dragonite. The main hurdle of removing a Dragonite from your deck list is that an Iron Valiant EX cannot knock out an Iron Hands cleanly in one hit, and that's already a pretty terrifying card for Lost Zone to come up against, and if you're not immediately dealing with an Iron Hands on the spot, you could end up having no way of coming back back into the game because the deficit gets too far. We then have the more traditional item cards that we have seen in the deck list. Palpad could easily make it into the list, as can Echoing Horn. A small note on Echoing Horn, because we are a little bit worried about Jirachi plus Manaphy being a combination in some players' deck lists, Echoing Horn could randomly be a helpful card to block your opponent's bench off from having the duo combination that stops you spamming your Sableye. We have recently seen Crosswitcher do quite well in Lost Box at the Lille Regional Championships, and if we want to go down a heavy Pokestop based build and cut out the Forest Sealstone V package in favour of these EXs, I can certainly see that working out, especially because it has incredible synergy with Iron Hands EX. Both Minior and the TM Devolution could be interesting tech cards. The Minior helps out against colourless Lugia because it can deal with Snorlax with just one colourless energy attachment, and gives you some extra random coverage if there are going to be controlling Blocklax style decks in the format. Whereas Devolution is going to be a huge issue for some of these evolving archetypes. I know Gardevoir is already pretty reasonable for you, but this can give you a new direction of attack, and it's obviously going to be a huge headache for the likes of Goldengo and Charizard EX players. Finally, if you're not too inspired by the Raihan package, I can definitely see some of the more traditional supporters coming back into the deck list. Roxanne is always good for some hand disruption, Clara's a great way to recover your Pokemon in addition to your Super Rods, and Avery is yet another way that you can defend yourself against a combination of Manaphy and Jirachi to once again give your opponent a really difficult position of what to protect on their board, or leave them with basically nothing but their protection just to shut off that Sableye. Hope you enjoyed today's video. Let me know your favourite way of playing both Lost Box in the new format as well as Roaring Moon. Do you think both of these archetypes are going to be top tier? Does Lost Box fall off with the threat of Jirachi as well as Iron Hands? I'll hear it all down below, and I'll see you tomorrow for another video. Cheers.